Hey everybody, Jake here with TrendSpider. Hopefully everybody had a good trading week and a good trading month with October being over. So today we're going to go over the weekend update going into next week, as well as a new month with November and December being the last trading months of 2021. And we'll start out with the broad markets and then go into some individual names, starting with SPY. And you can see here, shown by this blue box here, SPY just had a massive candle for the month of October with this outside bar, as well as the month of October closing near the high of the month, as well as the all-time highs. And so just really strong momentum going into November, into one of the strongest months of the year since 2009. So that's pretty much since the market bottom during the financial crisis. So we want to measure, historically speaking, how have we performed on a month-by-month basis since that time in the market's history. So you can see here, November has a 92% win rate. December has a 75% win rate. And this essentially means that 92% of the time, November closes higher than October's monthly close, and December closes higher than November's monthly close 75% of the time. So you can see here that we're kind of in between this long-term resistance and this shorter-term resistance going back since 2015. And you'll see here that this previous resistance would act as potential support below if we did move to the downside. But you can see the upside is pretty blue skies above, if you want to call it that, all the way up to around 550, all the way up to almost 600 on SPY. Now, this doesn't mean we're going to test that anytime soon, but you can see here how far to the upside that we do have to go. Now, if you look at the monthly chart, the weekly chart, you'll see here that we do have kind of some shorter term levels to watch with this ascending wedge to the upside, anywhere from around 470 all the way up to around 480, which is the level a lot of people are watching for the yearly target here. So all in all, we're looking very strong on both the weekly and the monthly charts going into the month of November, and really going into some other names as well. So QQQ is also really got a pretty strong weekly chart here. So you can see here that we also closed near the high of the week as well as the high of the month. We did break through this previous all-time high zone from August, and you can see here that we closed pretty strong above it. And you'll see how well these anchored VWAPs and this anchored VWAP handoff from May of 2021 have acted over the last 6 months or so. You can see here that we bottomed pretty much perfectly on this handoff anchored VWAP, which is essentially the last time that the monthly candle tested the original March lows here and really acted as a nice base here for price. And we've gone pretty much straight up over the last 3 weeks. And going into November, you can see that there's a 75% win rate. So definitely not as high as the 92% win rate for SPY, but still a pretty strong win rate and the third highest out of the 12 months of the year since 2009. So really looking very strong here. And then on a monthly basis here, you can see if we look at the volume by price and anchor the volume by price from the COVID lows, we've got this huge volume shelf forming, and we're kind of just creating a base and kind of launching off of it right now. And it's really anyone's guess on where we go from here. Now, obviously, you can simply just create this longer term shorter term resistance line here, this diagonal resistance, which may put us around 404 to 405. And that would make sense. A lot of people didn't think 370s were possible, in the beginning of October, and here we are almost at 390. So a really strong close, almost near the high of the month, as well as all-time highs here going into November. And then if we go into IWM, this is really the one that speaks to the overall maybe risk sentiment in the market. So you can see here, IWM is in this bull flag, and a lot of people think of IWM as your risk on, risk off sentiment in the market. And honestly, it kind of seems to be cryptocurrency at this point, but IWM is also a proxy that you can use for risk on, risk off in the market. And you can see here on IWM, we've got this bull flag on the monthly chart. We've gone over this chart multiple times over the last month. You can see here that we've pretty much tested this previous resistance, now acting as support back in July and August. And now we're potentially breaking out of this bull flag, going into the strongest month of the year, with November also having a 92% win rate, similar to SPY, and then December having a 75% win rate since 2009. So going into the end of the year, this is a very strong time of the year. The market has been very strong all year, so the likelihood of kind of having a sell-off going into the end of the year due to tax loss selling may be less of a chance here than if we had a weaker year. Now, going into some of the individual names, but before we do that, we'll go into crypto just to look at kind of some more of that risk on, risk off in the market. Bitcoin had a very strong Friday and really a strong month for October. Now, remember, crypto does go into Sunday, so the month is not over for crypto yet, but all in all, we're kind of having trouble getting through these previous all-time highs. But what I've done here is I've essentially looked at the last time we broke out of this previous horizontal resistance, measured the move here, and then applied that to this current candle, assuming we may be breaking out into November. And if that's the case, your measured move going into 2022 would be all the way up here at 250 plus thousand for Bitcoin. Now, I'm not sure that's possible or it's even likely, but that's just simply kind of playing around with the measured moves on the monthly chart. Now, if you look at the weekly chart, you'll see here that you do have this weekly candle forming here after testing the all-time highs, pulling back a little bit. And if we do break and close above these previous all-time highs, this is where you'd get some of those shorter term price targets. The first one being the 1.618 extension right around 87,000. If we broke that, then your next one would be around 122,000. And remember, we want to use Fibonacci levels here. We're essentially measuring the move from April to the lows in July because we don't have any previous price history to the left. There's nothing to look back at here. And so you want to use Fibonacci levels at this point when we're kind of in price discovery mode. So Bitcoin definitely needs to close above all-time highs to really get going here. Going into November, pretty much since 2014, which is as far back as the data goes here for Bitcoin on TrendSpider for Coinbase at least, you can see that November has a 67% win rate. One of the higher months, but not the highest month or even the second highest month here. So all in all, higher than 50%, but nothing too crazy. But notice that December does have a little bit of a weaker seasonality. But if you look back at last December, we had a huge move to the upside. So seasonality with crypto can be a little bit of a I don't want to say a gamble, but I personally like to look at seasonality more on the stock side of things than crypto, because crypto does have a mind of its own a lot of the time. Now, going into Ethereum, you'll see here that we do have all-time highs that were hit this week, and you can see here that we are finally starting to break out of this ascending triangle here. And this is kind of what we want to see with Bitcoin. We want to see a break of these previous all-time highs. We have the measured move from May all the way down to July here, and the 1.618 extension for this move would be right around 6,000. So if we break out here, that would be a pretty strong move to the upside. You can also see going into the end of the year for Ethereum, pretty much since 2016 on Coinbase, 60% win rate and then an 80% win rate for November. Then January has an 80% win rate as well. So going into the next several months, we do have some pretty strong seasonality here for Ethereum as well. So if you're looking at crypto as a risk on, risk off type of sentiment indicator, these are definitely looking pretty strong going into the end of the year. Now, the next one that's somehow seems to be tied with cryptocurrency a lot of the time is Tesla. And Tesla's gone nothing but straight up pretty much since this weekly ascending triangle breakout here back in early October. And we did really just continue to break out of all-time highs from last week. Same chart from last week, and you can see that we just literally blasted off here. Now, if you go to the monthly chart, this was a chart I made a couple weeks ago. And you can see here, all I'm doing is I'm measuring the move from the January high all the way down to the March low. And we hit this 1.618 extension almost right on the head here. And if we do continue up, same thing with crypto that we talked about. We don't have any price action to the left. So we need to use these Fibonacci extensions when we're in price discovery mode. So if we do break through this 1125 area zone, give or take, $10 to $20, the next area above would be all the way around 1500. So Tesla is an absolute machine here, and going into the rest of the year, November, December have increasing win rates with a November of 60% and then December of 80%, going back since 2016. But if we went back since the IPO, you'll see November actually is the second strongest month of the year with a 73% win rate, and December has a 64% win rate. So definitely going into a strong time of the year after just an absolutely very strong last 3 months for Tesla. Now going into NIO, we're going to get into the electric names here. We just went into Tesla, kind of starting it off. Going into NIO now, you'll see here that we do have the symmetrical triangle on the monthly chart. And notice here that we do have this wick here at the top of the monthly chart. And what's interesting is if you turn on the raindrop chart, you'll see here that a lot of that volume is actually within the wick shown by this monthly raindrop. So all in all, this is looking very strong going into the month ahead. And you'll see here going into November, now we don't have that much price history here since this IPO'd in 2018, but November has not had a red month since the IPO. So 100% win rate into November, a very strong setup here on the technical and the seasonality side for NIO. So definitely one you want to keep an eye on going into November. The next one is Plug. Now we're kind of getting into the powering of the electric vehicles here with Plug Power. This one has really been a leader in the sector, and you can see here pretty much anchoring the volume by price from the 2018 low. We do have this volume shelf forming, and you can see quite a bit of volume at the top of the range here. We didn't get to pierce through the all-time highs on the monthly chart here, but you can see there's a lot of volume at the top of the range. That means that there's a lot of buyers willing to absorb any of that supply that sellers are putting on the market. And if there wasn't conviction by buyers up here, you wouldn't have a volume profile. The price would have to drop in order for sellers to meet in the middle with buyers. In this case, we know that there were buyers willing to absorb that supply up here, which is a very strong sign, especially being above the volume shelf going into the month of November. Now, looking at Plug Power does have a weak November and December. You can see here 27%, 18%. So that's something to consider, but you also have to consider that seasonality is something you use as a variable and a tool in the toolbox. But it is something to definitely keep in mind, especially as we do have trouble getting through this all-time high anchor VWAP going into November. Now, the next one is BLNK. This is Blink. Full disclosure, I do have a position in this one simply because I think it's kind of lagging Plug. Now, these are two separate companies. Plug is more of a charging station. Blink is more of charging stations. Plug is more of powering electric vehicles through hydrogen fuel cells. So it's not necessarily exactly the same thing, but it's in the same sector, meaning, they're both working on providing energy to electric vehicles. And this one does seem to be lagging a little bit. You can see here on the monthly chart, we do have this anchored VWAP pinch that's forming from these highs and these previous lows here back in the COVID days. And if you look at the weekly chart, this is what's really interesting here on the weekly chart. If we get rid of the volume by price, you'll see here that you've got a really interesting setup here. So the main thing to point out, let's turn on just the hollow candle here. You'll see here that we finally broke out of this descending resistance. So essentially what that means is this area highlighted in red. You'll see here, let's get this figured out. All right. So this area that is shaded in red, this zone, we finally broke out through it this week, closed almost near the high of the week. And you can see here back in October, November of 2020, we had a similar breakout here and a very strong move to the upside. So you do have this anchored VWAP pinch forming. We're kind of at the bottom of the anchored VWAP pinch. We finally started to break out. We do have quite a bit of supply up here if we do measure the volume by price from this previous pivot here back in October of 2020. So the main area that you'd want to get through is right around 33 to 34. This is a zone, it's not an exact price, and that's how you should always look at the market. Now, if we did break out through this break-even supply above highlighted in red, we could retest this anchored VWAP above. And this anchored VWAP is essentially using the percent offset. So remember, if you do want to add an offset to your anchored VWAP, just go to properties and click the drop down menu here on bands, choose percentage band, and you can add a percentage here. I'm adding a 10% offset to the upside, simply because you can see here that the price did move a little bit above this area once we hit these highs. So I wanted to add a little bit of margin of error here. And you can see the last 2 times that we've tested this COVID low anchored VWAP, we moved up to this all-time high anchored VWAP pretty quickly. And that's something to consider if we do break that break-even supply above. So BLNK looking very strong going into the week ahead. Next one is LCID. Lucid, another one that had a very strong week. And you can see here that on the weekly chart, we did break through this previous horizontal resistance. If you look on the daily chart, we do still have this gap above. So using the gap snake here, you can see that we have this gap above all the way to around 56.50, a little less than 56.50, right around 56.11, 56.20 or so. And one thing that was really interesting, notice that we had this wick on Thursday. A lot of people look at a wick like this and they think it's selling pressure. But really, if you turn on the raindrop chart, you'll see that this was essentially a raindrop with a lot of volume at the top of the range. So essentially that shows that there was really heavy conviction by buyers absorbing that supply at the top of the range. And we did continue up all the way up almost to 42 on Friday. But notice here, this is a little bit of a red flag for LCID. You can see there's not a ton of volume at the top of the range for Friday. Most of that volume was at the bottom. So a little bit of a red flag there going into the week ahead. But if we did continue to move up and fill the gap, all you need to do is right click, create an alert at the bottom of the gap. And whenever that gap starts to fill above, you'll get that alert on your phone and your email. So this is a way to track these price levels and these gaps without having to necessarily stare at the chart all day. Next one we'll go over is Snow. So Snowflake is one that did have the highest monthly close that it's ever had. So if we go back to the monthly chart, you'll see here that we have hit a higher high here. We didn't hit all-time highs, but we did have a monthly close that was the highest that we've ever had since the IPO. So really strong setup here. If we look at the weekly chart, this is something I want to point out here. You can see here that if we look at the raindrop chart, this is just another great example using the raindrops to get an idea of, where that volume is aggregating within a specific time frame. In this case, you'll see that we finally broke above this horizontal resistance that's pretty much been resistance back since the beginning of this year. And you can see that there was a lot of volume above the horizontal level here, and we've pretty much gone straight up over the last 2 weeks since we had this breakout. So this is a great example of volume backed breakouts through resistance zones. You've got the volume profile here, and you've got a continuation up. And who knows, we could possibly be hitting new all-time highs by the end of the year. You can't really do seasonality on Snow because we haven't been around more than about a year or a little more than a year at this point. So you do only want to use seasonality on the monthly side of things when you have at least 5 years. You want to have, or for Neo, we only had since 2018, but I really like to look at seasonality at least 5 years. You get a little bit of a bigger data set there. So that is Snow. Another one that looks very strong going into the month of November, and this is one that I have as a long-term position, more of an investment almost, is FUBO. So FUBO, if you look on the monthly chart here, you'll see something really interesting. You'll see that if we measure the volume by price from this reversal back in, wrong indicator. You'll see here if we really measured this since 2019, we've had a couple times where we've had these bull flag breakouts here, and you can see we've got this flag that we're currently in right now. We've been pretty much consolidating now for about 5 months. We've got this massive volume shelf forming here, a lot of volume creating a base for the price. And if you look at the previous bull flag breakouts here, back in 2020, we had about 142% breakout. And then in October of 2020, we had about a 400% breakout. And so if we do have a similar breakout here, I just took the average of the A and the B and applied it to this this current flag. You know, this thing could really have a big move if IWM starts to cooperate going into the last 2 months of the year. Not saying this thing can go up 300% 2 months, but just taking the measured moves, this is a way you can get a general idea of, you know, what's happened in the past and apply it to potential future moves. So all in all, FUBO on the monthly chart looking very strong. If you turn on the raindrop chart, you'll also see that we have quite a bit of volume at the top of the range and quite a strong setup here going into the last 2 months of the year. Once again, November, December don't have the strongest months of the year, but you can see the seasonality on FUBO is a little wacky here. So I wouldn't necessarily look too deep into seasonality for FUBO, just because you do have some, you know, FUBO is kind of a newer company with its, I don't want to say it's a newer company, but with its kind of change of symbol and all of that back in 2020, it's kind of created a new personality for itself in the trading world, and that reflects on the seasonality, which we don't have a lot of information on quite yet, since it's been so soon since that's happened. Next one is First Solar, another kind of a renewable energy electric play, and really kind of an infrastructure bill play here. So if you look at the regular candle here, looking at the hollow candle, you'll see here that we finally broke out of this previous high. And you'll see here that last time we did that back in August of 2020, we did continue up over the next 5 months. And so if that was the case, if we want to take a measured move from this breakout point here, you know, that would put us right around, let's say 180. Now, if you took the measured move from this low to this high, and then you applied it to First Solar, you know, then you applied to this previous low here, you know, that would put us closer to the 250s to 270s. So all in all, definitely keep First Solar on the radar. A really strong monthly close, and we'll have to see what happens going into the rest of the year. But you can see pretty much since the inception of First Solar, going into November, not the strongest month, 50%, but going into December, one of the strongest months of the year. If we look back maybe since, let's say, 2016, over the last 5 years, you'll see that we do have a very strong November and December going back within that time frame. So something to keep in mind, but also something to you know, realize that this can happen. One of these candles in November, a big red candle after breaking out, retesting resistance, and then continuing up into maybe the rest of the year into next year. But all in all, this is exactly what you want to see, a nice close above these previous highs for First Solar. NVIDIA is the next one, a really strong monthly close here. You had a few months of kind of consolidation here, a really clear breakout. And, you know, at this point, this is one that you also may just want to add a diagonal resistance level to. And I'd probably use the channel resistance here to kind of highlight a zone rather than an exact area. But, you know, if we continue to move up, this would put NVIDIA over 300, maybe into the 350s into the months ahead based on this resistance zone above. So sometimes if you haven't hit all-time, or if you haven't hit these price levels before, you can use Fibonacci levels. But if you don't really have a very defined measured move, you can always use these diagonal resistance levels as well, and they work pretty well too. So keep an eye on NVIDIA for a continuation up into the rest of the year. The only thing I'll mention here, pretty much since 2016 at least, we have decreasing seasonality. But if you go back pretty much since, let's say, 1999, you'll see that November and December are relatively strong months for NVIDIA. Last but not least, GE. For those that think this is a boomer stock, you know, you can call it a boomer stock, whatever you want to call it. We do have a decent setup here. So what you want to see here is essentially this volume by price since the COVID lows. You've got this recent SR flip, and that's essentially when previous resistance is now becoming support. We have this volume shelf here, and this thing has literally been stuck now for about eight to 9 months, and it's almost kind of moving with IWM. So if IWM does continue to move up, this may be one that tests these previous highs around 115 or so, and you know, we'll have to see if this continues to move up with some of those other names that have gotten, either beaten down over the last couple months or just literally have not moved at all. So all in all, hopefully this monthly recap going into November was helpful for everybody. We used a lot of different tools on TrendSpider. Remember, we do have a 7-day free trial on TrendSpider. So if you want to give it a shot, we have the 7-day free trial. Just go to TrendSpider.com, go to the pricing page, choose the plan that you'd like to test out, and explore over the weekend. So hopefully everybody has a great weekend. Remember, if you enjoy these videos, please like and subscribe. I apologize if the white background is too bright for some people, but if we had a dark background, people would also, some people would have a problem with that. So hopefully the light background isn't too bright. If it is, make sure to lower the brightness of your screen a little bit. That should help a little bit so it doesn't hurt your eyes. But all in all, hopefully everybody had a great October. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next weekend.